Habits determine the quality of your life. Quality habits, healthy life. Toxic habits, toxic life. And so how do we turn that around? Well, the only way to turn that around is to realize that God has made you to be strong and courageous. The book Breakthrough Courage, at its very genesis, came during COVID. When we were going through COVID as a nation, I was a pastor. I'm oftentimes a life coach for others, and I had never seen so much fear. To experience so much fear in people's lives and to give counsel and wisdom, biblical input into their lives was sometimes really, really frustrating. I could not believe how energetic people were toward being anxious and worried in their life. So that was the beginning or the genesis of this book called Breakthrough Courage, 9 Habits to Conquer Fear and Build a Brave Heart. And what has happened over the years in the work that I've done in counseling leaders especially is beginning to reinforce within my heart an understanding of what kind of habits make a person courageous, or actually what kind of habits make people fearful. Because in a positive sense, which is what the book's about, Breakthrough Courage, I'm talking about how you can break out of the atrophy and the paralysis of fear into courage. And it's my belief that these 9 key habits can do that. But you know what's also true is that there's a lot of people on the other side, I'd say most people, who have 9, 10, 20 habits that are actually habits that bring fear into their life. So they have a conquering fear, or you have conquering courage. And so my emphasis in this book has been to help people understand that habits determine the quality of your life. Habits determine the quality of your life. Quality habits, healthy life. Toxic habits, toxic life. And so how do we turn that around? Well, the only way to turn that around is to realize that God has made you to be strong and courageous. And I look at Joshua as an example of this. Here he was under the tutelage of Moses. And at one point, it's appearing that Moses is going to leave. He's not going to be able to lead Israel into the promised land. This is in Exodus and then in Joshua chapter 1. And God speaks to Joshua, who's going to be the next leader, to be strong and courageous. God says that 3 times to him. And it seems as though Joshua was still full of fear, because in Joshua chapter 1, he has to be told 4 times by God that he needs to be strong and courageous. And so 7 times, God speaking through both Moses and through revelation from the Lord to Joshua, you can be strong and courageous. Well, I can tell you, if someone has to tell you something 7 times, it's obvious you're not getting it. So that's actually a comfort to me, because to realize that Joshua is just like me. I also struggle with fears. I also have less than a courageous attitude on a lot of things, because I've developed these habits that have reinforced fear in my life. And some of that comes from shame. Some of that comes from our background. Some of that comes from just my own belief system that's been developed. And so this book is an attempt to take the reader through a process. And I would say it's an incremental process. And that's one of the key things that I talk about in this book, is learning to do a little a lot. And that's really what a habit is. A habit isn't necessarily doing a lot a few times. It's actually doing little things well. It's doing the little things right in our life. And for me, this really happened when I was in Japan. So I was a missionary in Japan years ago and didn't know the language, of course. And also, to give you a brief background on me, I wasn't very good in Spanish in high school. And the only reason I passed my Spanish class in high school was because my gymnastics coach needed me to compete. So he always gave me a passing grade. But I didn't work very hard at languages. I wasn't necessarily gifted in languages. And now, here I am at 23 years old on the mission field in Tokyo, working with college students. So I don't know where this idea came to me, but it did, and it worked. And that was, I decided every day I was going to go on a college campus near where my headquarters were for the ministry, just walk on the campus and talk to Japanese students in Japanese. And so I knew a few phrases, and so I started working on those phrases, and then I started taking some classes in Japanese, and so I was learning some grammar. But I then would all I did 10 minutes. I just thought, I can do 10 minutes. And so I went on campus, and it was just easy because the Japanese students loved meeting an American, and then especially American who wanted to learn their language. So I would spend 10 minutes talking with them and conversing, usually over coffee or a Coke or something like that. And then it kind of evolved into this idea that I need to learn new sentence structures. I need to learn some new ways to say things. My vocabulary was increasing, but my ability grammatically was behind. So I started coming up with like 2 sentence structures a week that I could also work on. So now I'm doing 10 minutes a day with college students, and then I'm also trying to loop in, and I remember having index cards that I would write down kind of what the sentence structure looked like, and I would try to incorporate that into my conversations. And I just began to get the language faster than everybody else, and it was pretty amazing. And it was simply those 2 habits. It was 2 habits. It was 10 minutes a day, and then it was also looping into that these 2 sentence structure grammar challenges that I put into it. So it was what I would call micro progressions. It was micro progressions in my life. But you see what I'm saying? That was a habit. And I like to say a little done a lot is more valuable than a lot done a little. And so that's what the 9 habits is about. It's about helping you do a few things well that you could do every day that can change your life. And it really does change you from fear to a new quality of life based in faith. That's what this book's about. It's about harnessing time and energy. You could also argue that habits harness time, energy, and money, because money is habits built around time. And so when we speak in terms of a habit and the quality of a habit in our life, we're talking about time, energy, and money in our life. And it has this exponential impact. This is what I tell people, and it really seems to help them understand it, that is if they understand economics. So let me just quick economics lesson, and that is that when you have some money and you put it in a savings account that's interest bearing, then if you leave that money in that account, it's going to gain interest. But the way the exponential increase of interest is that the interest and your principal then increases with interest. So you have interest on the principal. So there's this exponential effect. Some people have called this the miracle of interest, the miracle of exponential interest, that there's a point where it really explodes. So if you're regularly, and this is the key point here, if you're regularly putting money, even a tiny bit of money, into an interest-bearing account, could be the stock market, could be a savings account, whatever, and you don't touch it. In other words, you don't keep taking it out because that just defeats the whole purpose, but you let it grow, there is a point of exponential increase as the deposits you're making into the principal that's gaining interest is then gaining interest on the interest of the principal of the deposits that you're putting in. That's the way habits work. Habits are the same way. So I have a chapter on the importance of your health and harnessing your health in your life. And I talk about working out. So when you first start working out, you're not going to see any difference because you just started. But if you quit after a month, you didn't see any, it didn't work for me. Well, the problem is you haven't developed a habit yet, okay? So if you develop the habit and you enjoy the habit, which I think is important, maybe not at first, but you need to enjoy the habit so that it's intrinsic motivation instead of extrinsic motivation, then what happens is you start having muscle memory. You start having muscle memory where you can't not work out because you know the feeling, it's a part of who you are. That's how extrinsic, so the extrinsic motivation might be I want to lose 25 pounds. Okay, that's your motivation. That's fine, good start, okay? But you're not losing it, okay? After a week, you haven't lost any. After 2 weeks, you lost 1 pound. After 3 weeks, you lost maybe 1.5 pounds. And after 2 months, you've lost 3 pounds. You go, this doesn't work for me. But the 4th month, you lose 5 pounds. The 5th month, you lose 8 pounds. And so what begins to happen is that there's an exponential increase within your workout that's building muscle memory, building strength, building your immune system. You're starting to metabolize your food better, etc. I could go on and on that. But that's how habits work. So this book is about 9 habits. I could have given 25, but nobody would do it. But 9 habits that I think are key, and they really revolve around the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, and the physical. They're all part of that in the journey that God has for you to be an exceptional person who walks with breakthrough courage. So I challenge you to read the book and to start taking it seriously. And I know absolutely that it'll change your life.